Soulless Dead, Chapter 18, An Unlikely Reunion. I awoke a little groggy from last night's festivities, only to unroll my cocoon of blankets to the cold fall air. I looked around the room of all the children huddling around the little Bunsen burner on the floor. The light was going really dim, and the warmth had all but left the room. I could see my breath for the first time in quite a while, and I didn't expect it to get that cold last night, but I knew the cool air was coming. I rolled out of bed, rubbing my hands against my arms, trying to keep warm, and I grabbed my shemagh and wrapped it around my neck, hoping to get a little warmer. I grabbed some of my gear for the day and headed out the front door. I made my way into the hallway and I saw a few people up. Two guys were sitting around, and a few of the doctors came up to me and asked if we could make some sort of fire to keep the building warm. I agreed. I had the two guys go down to the cellar, somewhere towards the parking garage, to go get some oil drums that were empty. We could haul them out and turn them into makeshift stoves. They agreed, and they went on their way to get firewood as well. I woke up Amy and told the kids to get ready. I had them go look around the building for paper and kindling and cardboard. If anything happened, just go to one of the adults. I made my way downstairs, and I met up with Paul and one of his other guys. He asked me if there was anything that they could do, and I had a project that I wanted to do. Seeing as we were in the third floor of a big building, the only way down would be through the stairwell. But what if we got stuck? I said to them. Well, they said we'd probably have to jump and hope for the best. I told them I'd fashioned a small paracord rope ladder a couple days ago. I just finished up the last one. I made about 3 of them. I told them to go up to the 5th floor and let them down the window and bolt them to the wall. That way we could climb down safely. They were reinforced enough to where we could do so. That way we'd be able to escape if something bad happened, which I hope we never had to. I made my way down to the parking garage, and I saw the men working on the barrels to get them ready. I nodded and told them I'd be back in a bit. I got my pickup truck and opened the gate and made my way out, while they closed it quickly behind me. It was pretty much your standard scene. I drove past the wreckage of the car before. It was still smoking a little bit, and the dead were huddled around it, trying to see what was in there. I drove quietly past them and made my way down the road. It was about 30 minutes into my drive when I parked and threw my little flak tarp over the top of it. I made my way down the street with my rifle in hand, with a hop in my step. Finally having people around me definitely made me less depressed. But the cool air was actually kind of relaxing. The pain in my leg and the swelling actually went down. It's the exact opposite, because I always liked the wintertime and the fall. The pain wasn't as bad, so it was pretty good. It started to mist a little bit, and the water was starting to get heavy in the air, so I hugged mostly underneath the overhangs and underneath the buildings on the sidewalk, hoping not to get drenched. I walked for a couple more minutes, and I heard a random shot go off. Of course, instinctively, I ducked down behind a mailbox again. Raised my rifle, looking around, scared out of my wits. I didn't want to get shot. God knows I didn't need it anymore. I just got over the infection in my leg. This happening doesn't really help the situation. I looked around, and I saw down the street 3 men shooting up at a building, and a couple flashes from one of the windows. I was worried. Here I am, and here we go again. I'm getting into a fight, and I know better. I didn't know what to do. I hid for a few moments, and I assessed the situation with a pair of binoculars I had in my rucksack. I looked down the street and saw 3 men with a little bit of body armor on, nothing that my bullets can't go through. They were shooting up at the window. The guys really couldn't fire, so they were blind firing and completely missing. Man, I felt bad for them. There was no way to get out of there, and as I could tell, they were starting to run out of ammo because they were firing a lot less consecutively. The other guys were having no problem, taunting them, harassing them, and calling them every name in the book but whoever their names were. I crept a little closer, and I could tell right away that there was something wrong. Those 3 guys were just shooting up at them. They were just standing there without cover. They must have been some sort of bandit. I stuck back and loaded 3 shells into the compartment of my rifle, and I racked the bolt and got ready. I held the rifle a little higher and aimed for the hip of the first guy. I fired and shot. I could hear it and see it crack his hip bone as his leg imploded. He fell over to the side and dropped with his face wincing in pain. His gun flew out of his hands, and the other 2 men dropped down, one of them kneeling to see what happened, and the other looking around quickly to see who shot it and where it came from. He immediately started firing over my general direction, but I racked the bolt again and got ready to shoot. By this time, a couple of the dead had started to show up, so at this point, they were pretty much preoccupied. One of them unsheathed a handgun and started firing randomly into the crowd of dead. There was only about 5 or 6 of them, so it wasn't really that bad. The other 2 men had stopped firing, and I kept looking up there to see if they were okay or if they were trying to fire back, but they weren't. I snuck my way through an alley next to the mailbox that I was posted up on, trying to flank around. The 3 men were trying to drag the man away as I started to peek through another alleyway right in front of them. I shot the guy that was looking around trying to shoot the other dead with his assault rifle right in the chest. He dropped immediately. His legs went limper than noodles underneath a boulder. He dropped to the ground and dropped his gun. The other man stood up, and right as he aimed it at me, one of the shots rang out from the window. I could see 1 or 2 shots come through the back of him through the front of his chest, seeing blood spray out as the holes punctured through. His eyes got wide and his face tensed up, and his arms and hands clenched as he dropped his gun. He dropped down to his knees and fell flat, face first to the ground. His face skinned against the concrete as his body laid flat. I racked the bolt and had another round in the chamber just in case. They definitely had the drop on me. I cut a piece of my pants off from one of the cargo pockets and stuck it on a stick that I found on the ground and waved it around, hoping that they wouldn't shoot at me. One of the men said, "Come out! Come out with your hands up. We don't want any trouble. If you are trying to help us, please just come out and don't hurt us. We just want to get out of here." Where have I heard that voice before? It sounded so familiar. But all the survivals out there and all the different voices, it wouldn't be surprised if one didn't sound like another. I slowly crept out, still waving the flag and holding my gun in my hand where I couldn't fire it. Keeping my head down, shaking a little bit, I was slightly scared. I didn't know what to do, and parts of my armor were a little exposed from past shots. One of the guys walked out of the front door, and I couldn't believe it as he pulled off a ski mask. It was my friend Derek. My lip quivered. I couldn't believe it. I dropped my gun and I dropped my flag and ran over to him. He had his arms out and we hugged each other. Derek was a good friend of mine, one of the first friends I made in Wichita for when I moved here. We've been going to church together for quite some time. I couldn't believe it. He was out here. First thing I did was I pushed him away a little bit and asked him, "What is he doing here? What are you doing out in the middle of the city?" He says, "You're not going to really believe this, but we were really worried about you after you left. When everyone found out that you escaped shooting at people, we weren't sure if that was you or not. We didn't even know you were detained. We thought you were just hurt in the hospital. We asked around and we found out the truth, and long and short, we were wanting to find out what happened." I said, I wasn't hurt. I had some wounds, but it wasn't that bad. And yeah, they jailed me, but I didn't shoot anybody. I swear to you. I swear to God. He says, "Honestly, I believe you. We didn't hear any shots on the day you left, so a lot of the stories were really inconsistent. And that made us want to leave and come help you." Again, I stopped and said, "Wait a minute, what do you mean we?" I looked inside the dimly lit building and I saw somebody, a silhouette, walking down the wooden steps down towards me, carrying a rifle in one hand and a rucksack in the other. He set them both against the wall and came out of the darkness. It was my other friend, Blake. Now, he was a survivalist and a really smart guy and worked as a cop. He was a good friend of mine, too. We traded tips and all sorts of stuff, and we became good friends as well. I couldn't believe it. I shook hands with him and I told him, what are you guys doing here? That's insane. I mean, what are the odds of you guys being out here? He said, like Derek just said, we were worried about you. We didn't think the stories were true, and so we wanted to find out ourselves. It took us forever to get in the city. As you know, after the battle, people were starting to leave in droves that were straggling behind. It caused quite a bit of trouble with the zombies following them closely. Someone just gave up on the outside of town, so it made a makeshift zombie fence, if you will. We couldn't get our car through it, and after a little bit of trouble, the first day we left, we had to leave the car completely because it got swarmed. We were barely able to make it out of there alive. Luckily, we didn't get bit. Ever since then, we've been snooping around, between crazy people sitting on top of roofs trying to shoot at us, and marauders and crazy folks wanting to steal what little supplies we've been able to find. It's been rough. To think, we just find you here. I stopped them and told them, "You're not going to believe this, but I only live a couple blocks down the riverfront, in a small old hotel, the third floor. I can't believe it." Derek couldn't believe it because they'd walked by there a couple times looking for me in the middle of the night. Of course, with visibility low and there's no street lamps, it made it very difficult to find people. They sure were happy to see me, and I was happy to see them. They were my first friends I'd seen since all this went down, since I left. I couldn't believe it. They asked me how I'd been surviving, and I told them I was able to find all kinds of material and pretty much snoop around. I was able to find all kinds of things and make use of things that normal people wouldn't use. Of course, reading books really helped me in the past, and so it came into use. They smiled and said, "Well, we're glad you're okay. But what are we going to do now? Really didn't think this far. How are we going to get you back in the city?" I took a deep breath and I told them I'm really not sure. To be honest, I don't know if I want to go back. I don't know if it's safe for us to go back. I mean, you guys just up and disappeared after I left? I mean, maybe I took you guys captive. That's what they're going to think. Derek said, "Nonsense. There's no way." But it made perfect sense since they turned me into a small pariah. Derek and Blake assured me that they would try to clear my name and say that it was all lies. He did say that a lot of the townspeople were worried about me and my health, so to speak. I admitted to them that I wasn't exactly the best kind of person to be around people, at least not for a while. It was only 4 months, but I was able to get through a lot of my problems, and I think my isolation was a good way of doing it. I told them it was really good to see him again, because I couldn't tell them enough. It was like someone lit a little candle inside my heart and warmed me right up. I couldn't believe I saw some friends that I thought I'd never see again. I figured that they would hate me for what I'd become, but I guess I really didn't test the power of friendship as hard as I could. I really didn't trust myself, or any of my friends. And for that I apologized. Well, we got all the formalities out of the way after about an hour of talking, and we slowly made our way back through the misty, rainy fall day. It was starting to get cooler as the sun went down around later that day. After we picked up some supplies and grabbed some of my drop points from my bug-out locations, we made our way back to the hotel. We laughed and told jokes and told stories about how things are going back in the town. It was good to hear how good other people were doing, and it was sad to hear about some of the elderly folk passing. But it was good to hear that they were doing okay. We made our way into the parking garage, pulling in slowly. A few of the people that I'd gotten with were wincing and looking at me like, "Who are these people? Who are these guys?" I told them to head up and close the gate and go up to the lobby and get everybody ready. While they were all gone, I got out of the truck and pulled out my gun and all my supplies and helped them out of the truck. Grabbed some of the supplies too. We set it on the ground, and before they walked up the stairs I stopped them. I said, "As you can tell, I've started a new little family of my own. I don't know exactly a lot about them, but they trust me. I've saved them. I know this isn't some kind of dog rescue, but you're going to have to get used to them. They don't know you, and I barely know them, but we get along okay. Just try not to be abrasive." They said, "When have we ever been abrasive?" Well, I told them what I knew and what I wanted them to know. Derek said, "Why didn't you just be honest with them?" "Well, what if they find out?" I said, "If they find out, what if they turn against me?" Blake agreed. As much as I hated not telling the truth, it was just better that they didn't know about my past and what I'd done. We made our way upstairs and got our story straight, and we met all the people. The doctor and even some of the injured folk were up and walking around with the help of a stick or a crutch. We all did our formalities, and I introduced them to Paul and Amy. I told them about my pals and how I was from Rose Hill, but we left out some of the darker parts. They smiled and waved and said hello and played their part pretty well. But something inside me just made me feel obligated to say something about my past. But I really didn't want to, considering all the things that I've already gone through and the fact, as far as I'm concerned, I redeemed myself. They didn't need to know. We got our things together and we started to settle in when all hell broke loose. We heard a small explosion go off down the street. I woke from a little nap. I couldn't believe it. I thought inside my head, damn, not this again. No, come on. We don't need more people. I made my way slowly over to the balcony, slowly peeking my eye through the curtain. It was a couple trucks, and they had some serious machinery. A bunch of guns, and a light machine gun attached to the back of a pickup truck. I saw the man rack the bolt, and I started pushing the kids to the ground and telling everybody to get down. As soon as I did, a large barrage of lead and hot bullets bounced around through the glass, shattering it everywhere. Everybody else started opening fire. Small arms fire, machine guns, assault rifles, you name it, it was going off. Everybody was screaming and freaking out. I made my way over to the door and made my way into the hallway, slowly having the kids crawl out of the room. I looked around and I saw Derek and I saw Blake with their rifles in hand, crouched down behind a wall just outside of the windows they were shooting at. I said, "Are these your friends?" He said, "It must have been them. We ran into them a couple days ago. We didn't give them any supplies and we gave them the slip after they tried to capture us. They followed us over to that building you found us in, and then they followed us over here somehow." Damn, I gritted my teeth. I said, "We gotta do something." I grabbed a bag of bullets and I handed it to him. One of the kids helped him sort out some of the bullets for the rifles and reload some old magazines. The others started to grab the guns that they had and started positioning themselves. I had 2 men with long rifles and go end to end on the buildings. I told them, if anybody else comes in from either side, I want you to shoot them. Let the dead take care of the rest. I had the other guys line up in other rooms adjacent to that wall. Those men were just wasting ammo, and I knew that they'd have to reload eventually. As soon as that LMG let down, we'd definitely start firing. Sure enough, I could hear the LMG stop firing. It's rat-a-tat-tat. It's methodical shooting. I had one of the guys peek out the window and fire on the truck. He peppered it quite a bit with the shotgun and even injured the guy as he fell over holding his shoulder. He must have gotten clipped. He fell out of the back of the truck and one of the men dragged him away to safety behind one of the parked cars. Other men started firing at where the shotgun went off. I immediately called down the hall for one of them to shoot out the window at the other guys to distract them. We're going to do a systematic whack-a-mole, if you will. One guy would poke out, and they'd draw attention, and so on and so forth. These idiots were falling for it so far. Again, bullets were screeching through the windows, glass was going everywhere. One guy was laying on the ground, rolling around. He must have got a piece in his eye. He was bleeding a little bit, and he made his way out of the room, standing up, running. I told him to get down, and a round struck him in the shoulder, dropping him to the ground. One of the doctors crawled in and grabbed him and started pulling him into one of the safe rooms behind the cinder block wall. "He's going to be okay," he said. "He's going to be all right. I'm going to put pressure on it. I'm going to get that glass out of his eye." His wife came in and started helping him. I told him, "Don't worry about him. He's going to be okay." I told Blake and Derek to position up with me. I got my rifle ready and they got their 2 ARs ready. We aimed out the window and aimed towards the pickup truck where some of them had taken up a little post. We aimed and I said, 1, 2, 3. They both pulled their triggers and started firing on the truck. One of the men got clipped in the head. You could see part of his skull pop up into the air and blood splatter as he slunk down. One of the men looked over at him and then started firing at us. We were able to see the white of their eyes. As I was firing and racking the bullet, the shells were flying everywhere. I even saw one fly up and a bullet catch it and send it flying. It made me duck, but I lifted my rifle up and popped one of the guys. I hit him in the chest and he dropped really quickly. A few other guys started making their way towards me, where I was at. Blake caught them with his rifle and Derek shot a few more on the other side. I looked at both of them and said, "How many are there? How many are going to keep coming?" I heard a yell down the way on the right side of the building. He said, "A few guys are coming up. We need to hurry." And I heard him start opening fire. I racked my bolt and made my way down to the end of the room and telling them to start firing and keep going, keeping them suppressed. I made my way down the steps after the man at the end of the hallway told me where they were at. I made my way down there and I saw a few guys trying to cut the bolts on the doors. I lifted up my handgun and my revolver and started firing on the glass, taking out both of them. The blood splattered between the plexiglass and it missed it everywhere. The glass eventually shattered after I shot it enough times. I ducked back into the stairwell, reloading my revolver with a quick mag and putting another clip into my pistol. I was definitely worried. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was running low on magazines and quick loaders. I looked down and I saw a bullet raise off. I looked back again, and the guy was reloading his gun. It looked like a double-barrel shotgun or something. I pulled out my revolver and aimed down the way and shot about 3 shots. One struck him in the knee and dropped him to the floor, and the other one caught him in the shoulder, and the other one caught him in the chest. It was like something out of an action movie. He dropped to the ground and was moaning and groaning. A few of the dead started breaking through the broken glass, and they went over to him and started shredding him apart. He was screaming, but I didn't know what else to do. Blake ran over to my side and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "What are you doing down here? You're supposed to be firing." He's like, "I'm helping you. You need backup. Your body's not exactly in the best shape." He handed me something in a pouch, and I said, "What is this?" He's like, "Goodies. You're going to love these." I reached in, and I felt, and I was like, "No way." They were old little mortar rounds, about the size of a Nerf football. Not sure what millimeter, but they were useful. I pulled the pin and smacked it against the wall and tossed it in there. We made our way up to the second floor and hid and ducked. The bomb exploded, blowing out the glass. We could hear a few people screaming as they said grenade. We made our way back down, and the room was completely filled with smoke. Some wires were hanging down, tiles were busted everywhere. Some people were blown apart, and other people were just barely alive, moaning and groaning. They probably couldn't hear anything either. Their ears would probably be ringing, and they probably wouldn't be able to stand up. A few of the zombies kept crawling forward. One of them had his legs completely blown off. He was dragging, making his way to one of the guys that I'd shot. We moved in and shot one of the guys that was laying on the ground being chewed on. Put the poor bastard out of his misery. We made our way outside, pushing forward as fast as we could. I shot one of them. He couldn't have been more than 17 years old, right in the head. He dropped immediately. One of the men tried to grab him as he reached out, trying to pull him, but it yanked him out. It exposed him, and Blake caught him in the chest as he reached around me. We made our way down the street, and we ducked behind a trash can. The trash can got lit up, and we had to roll out of the way. We went prone and rolled out, and saw 2 men behind a truck just next to us. We shot them. We shot their legs out. Blowing out their legs, they dropped to the ground, holding them and screaming. One of them leaned over trying to shoot us, and Blake shot him through the hand, disarming him. He ran over to one of them and kicked the gun out of the other guy's hand and held them at gunpoint. I ran up to him, pushed Blake out of the way, and shot both of them. Blake's like, "We could have taken them prisoner. Why did you do that?" "Dude, this is battle. We've got children up there. We can't let any of these guys live." He looked at me and said, "Fine. We'll deal with it like this, but we're going to talk later." I was like, "No time." We continued to fire for what seemed like forever. Eventually, the burps of their machine guns quit. Me and Blake sat behind that truck, breathing heavily, reloading our magazines, hoping to God that none of them would show up. I yelled up at one of the busted-out windows, asking if anybody was okay. I heard Phil yell out, "We lost one of them. He got shot in the neck. He bled out pretty quick." I said, "Who?" hoping it wasn't Derek. It was just one of the arbitrary guys. I was glad, but at the same time, I felt terrible. I felt terrible for feeling glad. These were people I was supposed to protect. So he asked, "How are you guys doing down there?" I answered, "We're doing okay. We're okay. Are any of them left?" I heard Phil yelling in the background. It was inaudible. I heard all clear from both sides of the building. Thank goodness. I had a few of the guys come down, and including Amy, and pick up some of the guns and some of the ammo. The trucks were so shot to hell that we probably couldn't even drive them, and gas was leaking everywhere. We made our way inside the building and went up to the second floor and barricaded the walls and the doors. We could no longer use the lobby since the glass was blown out and the doors were blown open. I'm sure I'm happy we're okay. I'm sure I'm glad that my friends are here.